So if we want to assess a budget, the fundamental thing you need to look at is what you rightly said earlier: revenue and expenditure. Revenue, the money they will generate to implement the programs of government outlined in the budget through expenditure. Now, the 2026 budget, therefore, gave an account of the assessment of the economy for 2025 and then made projections of what we will see in 2026. So, if you look at the assessment of the economy in 2025, it will seem that the government has done so much in terms of implementing the budget, whereas in fact the budget has not been implemented. And that is why this year has been a year of inactivity. Just tell me, since President Mohammed took over, what fundamental changes have you seen in the economy? They make noise about foreign exchange, currency, the appreciation. They make noise about single-digit inflation. But we understand the context of those numbers, and I believe we will discuss, those issues. But apart from that, what have you seen? Have there been changes in the living conditions of the people of Ghana? No. Has government implemented serious programs? No. So this year of inactivity is not surprising to us when you assess the budget. The budget will tell you clearly that government has not implemented its programs optimally. Now, the expenditure side, for example, shows that there were significant cuts as a result of the lack of implementation of the programs. And this is what I will describe as fiscal indiscipline. Fiscal discipline is when you implement the budget as approved by Parliament. But when you have not implemented the budget and you've deviated significantly from it, that's fiscal indiscipline. So I was talking about the expenditure side, and one example I will give you is this. Some of government's priority projects or programs, the National Codex program was not implemented. 100 million Ghana cedis was allocated to it. It was not implemented. It has resurfaced in the 2026 budget with the same allocation of 100 million Ghana cedis. The Women Development Bank, was not implemented. The minister allocated 50 million Ghana cedis towards that. But 50 million Ghana cedis was less than the requirement for establishing a bank. And so it was deception. It has resurfaced in the 2026 budget, this time with an allocation of some 400 million Ghana cedis. Then you look at the big push. They budgeted 13 billion Ghana cedis. Yet the minister issued commitment authorization for the spending of just about 7.6 billion Ghana cedis. The 24-hour economy, they told us 133, one job, 3 people, 3 shifts. It was not implemented. It requires $4 billion United States dollars to be implemented. That was not implemented because the money was not raised. The investments were not realized. And this is why it has resurfaced in the 2026 budget.
Right.
This time with an allocation of, the minister said 110 million Ghana cedis. But if you look at the budget appendix, it's just 90 million Ghana cedis. 70 million of which is going to goods and services and 20 million going to capital expenditure. And so if you look at the assessment of the economy, the programs that would have created jobs, the programs that would have, increased the growth of the economy, they were not implemented. And so this is why we describe the budget as growthless, jobless. Right.
Right,
Now,
those are some strong languages, and we'll be coming to crunch the figures and also go into the areas for the expenditure. But, Doc, your background is particularly relevant here. PhD in Petroleum Economics, founded the African Center for Energy Policy, and also as Finance Minister, you successfully structured the $13 billion US dollar in Eurobonds with 98.6% participation under 9 months. And the IMF praised that accomplishments. So when you assess this budget, you're also speaking from technical expertise and the recent operational experience. Now let's start with what you call the systematic under execution. Your statement includes specific figures. We're looking at the capital expenditure program of 26.6 billion Ghana cedis for Q1 to Q3 2025. But only 11 billion Ghana cedis was released, which is a 59% shortfall. Goods and services programmed at 5.1 billion Ghana cedis, and only 3.8 billion was spent. Walk us through these numbers and what it means for the ordinary Ghanaian.
Well, goods and services are the things, the materials, the inputs required by MDAs, ministry, department, and agencies to run. Okay, they buy fuel, they buy stationery and consumables that are required for the proper functioning of government agencies. Now, you projected to spend 6.7 billion Ghana cedis this year on goods and services, and yet you released just 3.8 billion Ghana cedis. 3.8 billion Ghana cedis out of 6.7 billion Ghana cedis. Almost half of the budget for goods and services have not been released. Now, how do you expect the ministries, departments, and agencies to run? And this is the fiscal indiscipline I'm talking about, because you continue to pay workers every month, and yet you don't give them the tools, the inputs to work with. What are you doing to the economy? Then when you come to the expenditure side, the capital expenditure is also, a problem area. 32 billion Ghana cedis allocated for the year, only 11 billion Ghana cedis. That's not 56, that's actually 34%. And so if you implement 34% of your budget for the year, can you say you have implemented the budget? You haven't. And this is why the economy cannot grow, because the investment you are supposed to make to drive growth and to drive and to create jobs is capital spending. Yet you allocated 32 and spend just 11 billion. You cannot create jobs with this kind of investment. If you also reduce this to GDP terms, the allocation for capital spending was about 1.5% of GDP. What the minister has done is 0.5% of GDP. Now, this 1% of GDP gap in capital spending has cost us so much. It has cost us output lost. It has cost us job lost. If you really associate them with the IMF multipliers, you will realize that a lot of damage has been done as a result of the non-capital investment that the government is supposed to be doing. Now, these are quite worrying also, because if you do this, taxes that you would have generated out of the growth and the jobs that you create are also lost. And this is why the minister is not meeting his revenue target. They are not meeting their revenue target. For example, the data that the minister presented in the budget shows that for the first 3 quarters, first quarter, second and third quarter, which data he presented, there were significant shortfalls in revenue. total revenue and grants saw a shortfall of 7.7 billion Ghana cedis. 7.7 billion Ghana cedis. Domestic revenue, total domestic revenue, non-oil domestic revenue, experienced a shortfall of 6.8 billion Ghana cedis. And tax revenue itself, revenue from taxes, tax collection, saw a shortfall of almost 9 billion Ghana cedis. And so, how do you generate the revenue when you don't create growth? And this is symptomatic of, the failure of a budget. And so the fiscal policy of the government broke down, both on the expenditure side and the revenue side. And this is why he's presenting fiscal outturns that look good, such as the primary surplus that they have recorded, the lower deficit that they have recorded, and then they are touting it as stability. This is not stability. Behind the stability is really the non-implementation of the budget. And this is why I call that stability cosmetic. It is just stability on paper, but it is really not stability, because we have a significant disconnect between that stability and the struggling real economy.
Right. Mainly the response of the NDC government and the finance minister.
And let me add, if you care. When you stabilize an economy, that stability is supposed to trigger growth. It's supposed to engender growth. Okay? And so I was expecting that with this stability the minister is claiming, their projection for growth for 2026 will be significant. But it turned out to be disappointing. 4.8% growth. Despite the stability they are touting around. 4.8% growth. This is because the proposal to invest in capital spending is also insignificant, 3.6%. That is far lower than what is needed to create growth and to create jobs. The 4.8% is actually lower than what we achieved in 2024. 5.7% growth, real growth rate in 2024. And that was the time we are told the economy was recklessly managed, according to the NDC. There was no stability and the economy was reckless, yet the growth was 5.7%. Now, if you have stabilized the economy, one expected that the projection for growth will be higher. It is a disappointing 4.8% for 2026. And so, where is the stability? And that is why I keep saying that this stability is cooked. And you know how it is cooked? When they were presenting the 2020, accepted into government records. But the minister took all this together as arrears, some of them dating back to 2022, and put all these numbers in determining the fiscal outturn for 2024. And when you have such huge numbers as arrears, the fiscal outturn will turn out to be bad. That was what they did in order to make the MPP government look bad. And then you now turn out to say that your fiscals are good compared with the fiscals the MPP government left with. Whereas, in fact, this is manipulation of data. Now, the question I ask, in the 2025 fiscal outturn the minister churned out, why didn't he put all the arrears? Because he hasn't cleared all the arrears. Why didn't he put all the so-called arrears in determining the fiscal balances for 2025? He didn't do that. He didn't apply the same formula that he used in 2024 to the 2025 fiscal outturn. So do you call this stability? It is not stability. It is cooked stability. And as I speak to you, the budget reported that even the 64 billion Ghana cedis arrears they put together. The Auditor General has rejected already 18 billion Ghana cedis, which cannot be backed by documents, which cannot be backed by any approvals. And so we have indicated by the minister's own budget that what he put in determining the fiscal balance is 18 billion Ghana cedis of that has not been validated, has been rejected. So what do you say about the fiscal numbers you brought out for 2024 when it is now proven that 18 billion, which was part of the figures used in determining the fiscal out and the primary balance, is no longer valid? Yet you have told the world that you recorded 3% primary balance in deficit. Now 18 billion Ghana cedis has been taken out of the figures that you use in arriving at that fiscal out. How do you explain this? And so it's cosmetic. But the Ghanaian people are feeling the real economy. It is not the cosmetics we see on paper, which government is bragging about. It is what the Ghanaian people are feeling. And the Ghanaian people know that the economy is not growing. The jobs that they want, they are not getting. The 133 job model is not happening because the budget is not giving that investment that is required to create these conditions.
Doc, we spoke about the 59% shortfall in capital expenditure. They took over the economy when it was still under the thumb of the IMF.
Actually 34%.
Right. They took over the economy when it was still under the thumb of the International Monetary Fund. Could it be that ensuring fiscal discipline, it was the reason why we didn't see all the releases that between the first quarter and the third quarter of 2025?
If you talk about the releases in the 2025 budget, you go and take the 2025 budget. The minister had projected that if he spent 6.7 billion Ghana cedis in goods and services, he will still achieve a primary surplus of 1.5%. So why did he spend 3.8 billion? Again, he projected that if he spent the 32 billion in capital spending, he will achieve 1.5% primary balance. Why did he spend 11 billion Ghana cedis? And so what the IMF wanted the minister to do was to achieve the 1.5. Now the minister has underspent. The minister did not generate the revenue required. And therefore the 1.5% that he has now does not reflect the real budget that he was supposed to implement. What he has done is that Ghanaians have suffered because he kept cutting and cutting as he was not getting the revenue, as he could not implement the priority programs of the government.
So essentially, that's not fiscal discipline.
It's not fiscal discipline.
Right. When you see a pattern where budgets are approved and funds aren't released, what's actually happening on the ground? Are contractors not paid? Are schools not being built? Help our listeners to understand.
Exactly so. Contractors are not being paid. So arrears are accumulating. And so when they said they accumulated 0 arrears for 2025, I just laugh. Because these ministries must run. They must procure things. And if you are not paying, as we have seen from the data that the minister presented, it means the arrears are building up. Arrears are expenditure made, but releases are not made towards that expenditure. So arrears are accumulated. And so if you really unmax what has happened this year, then it is completely divorced from the budget that was presented by the minister. Exactly.
Right. Let's go to the documents.
Now you see, you want to fight about me. What did I do when I was finance minister? I can give you the data.
We'll come to that.
Yeah.
Doc, we'll come to that. But
Okay.
let's speak to the specific examples you highlighted in that report. You made mention of the Nkoko Nkiti livestock program, which was in the March 2025 budget, but only launched in November this year. And the National Codex program allocated again after being implemented in 2025. Now, are these isolated incidents, or do they reveal something systematic about implementation capacity?
Of course, it demonstrates that, but also spending capacity. Okay. And program in particular, Nkoko Nkiti, I understand they are supposed to give birds, chicks, right, to people, to households, so we can improve on our poultry production. It's a commendable program. But this is a program that was programmed for the 2025 budget. And one would have expected that if you wanted the impact in 2025 in terms of its contribution to growth, in terms of its contribution to poverty reduction, you would have implemented it earlier rather than waiting till 1 month to the end of the year to implement it. And so that's a clear example of implementation challenges of the government program. And if you recall, during the 2025 budget debate, I said all this on the floor of Parliament, that this government was not going to fund its priority programs. Because what I saw announced in the budget was at variance with what was in the appendices in terms of the amount allocated towards these programs. And so I knew that they would face problems. That was why I boldly said that this government did not intend implementing these priority programs. And I've been proven right. The Codex program hasn't been implemented. The Women Development Bank hasn't been implemented. Big Push hasn't been fully implemented. Now we are talking about Nkoko Nkiti. The Feed Ghana program, I don't even know the extent of implementation of that as well. So Nkoko Nkiti to be launched in the very week of the budget, 1 month to the end of the year. I'm really wondering what it was intended to achieve. This is why I say that the year has been a year of inactivity. But even when it comes to program implementation, timing is important. You are sending birds. You say how many days old?
So some a day old.
A day old.
Others are 6 months.
A day old.
Some are 6 months.
Look, Harmattan has started in many parts of Ghana. And this is a weather that is not friendly to such birds at that level. So are we going to see, just like the guinea fowls flew to Burkina Faso, are we going to get another story that Harmattan killed this?
Well, they say they
have
vet officials who will be visiting these homes.
Yeah, but Harmattan is Harmattan. That weather is a harsh weather for even fowls that are a year or above a year, not to talk of a day old chicks. So timing is of the essence, and this is why they should have implemented it earlier and not wait till this time when the impact will really be disturbed. Right. Now, I have looked at the data from the budget in terms of the revenue projection for 2026, and I worry. Number one, the minister is hoping to achieve a 16% of GDP in terms of revenue. Now, 18.8%, if the 16% is put in 100%, 18.8% of that is coming from domestic non-oil revenue. And the only policy measure I have seen to achieve this is compliance and digitalization. Now, compliance and digitalization does not give you a heavy effect immediately. It is gradual. The effect is gradual. And so I worry how the minister is going to achieve this revenue target. We told them the last time that their revenue measures were unrealistic. They didn't listen to us. Now we all can see that they are not meeting the revenue target. And they are again bringing a very ambitious target, yet without the policies, without the policy measures that will help them achieve that. The second issue is this. We all have been talking for some time now about broadening the tax base if we have to mobilize revenue to support development, broadening the tax base. In this budget, for 2026 budget, the minister is seeking to rather narrow the tax net. I'm sure you've seen it.
The rationalization.
Not the rationalization. The minister is reducing the VAT threshold from 200,000 Ghana cedis to 750 Ghana cedis. That would take a lot of people who were paying taxes out of the tax net.
750,000. Yeah.
Will be the new threshold. So how does he achieve the revenue target for 2026? When the only measures we see, number one, is compliance. And where compliance involves human beings,
we're being told of digitization.
The effect is gradual. Even the digitization, the effect is going to be gradual. And when is it going to be in place? People have to be trained, right? The equipment have to be installed, right? And then human beings have to give the data out. And human beings have to input the data into the digital platforms. And so you cannot be that ambitious, and yet you are so little when it comes to the policy measures. And then the only second policy measure I see is narrowing the tax base, when we are supposed to be broadening the tax base. I don't understand that type of economics.
Interesting picture you paint there. Let's speak about the infrastructure focus big push. 13 billion Ghana cedis allocated for 2025. But your research shows 7.6 billion in commitments, authorizations by July. If that 60% execution rate continues, does it mean that the 30 billion Ghana cedis allocated for the 2026 budget might realistically deliver only 18 billion of the actual work?
I know that the government cannot be trusted for saying that they allocated 30 billion Ghana cedis in the 2026 budget, that they will spend 30 billion Ghana cedis. The government cannot be trusted. To big push, you turn around to then say you are allocating 30 billion Ghana cedis for 2026. You haven't even released the 2025 budget. You are allocating 30 billion Ghana cedis. I don't understand that. So big push is a big name out there. At the end of the third year, when the big push projects are supposed to have completed, we will come and sit here and talk again.
Right, you're still listening to the Asaase Breakfast Show with me, Fritz Delanyo Amegashe. In the studio is the former Finance Minister, Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam. He's also a ranking member on the Finance Committee of Parliament and also a member of Parliament for the good people of Karaga. We're looking at the minorities assessment of the 2026 budget presented by Finance Minister Kasil Atilforsen. First part of discussion has focused on the capital expenditures and the necessary allocation versus the releases. Again, we have spotted that it didn't meet what was allocated and the dire effects on some of the projects and the contractors. Doc, many will say that you have managed this IMF program for 11 months. I want to find out from you, what were your capital expenditure rates? And I ask because I want to really understand if there's a problem or a continuing constraint?
I was expecting that you will do that research. Asking me.
Well,
you media people are supposed
you manage the program, and so yes,
you media people are supposed to be doing that research. But I believe I can give you the data. I have it here. So for goods and services in 2024, we budgeted to spend 12 billion Ghana cedis. That was the allocation. We released 11.5 billion Ghana cedis. Then if you came to CAPEX, capital investment, capital spending, we budgeted 29 billion Ghana cedis. We released 29 billion Ghana cedis. And so you have to do that research as well, so you can be convinced about these numbers. And in terms of spending to GDP, whilst the minister allocated 1.5% of GDP and did 0.5%, you could see that we spent all the allocation for capital spending in 2024. But it's not only in terms of the spending, even the revenue side, we exceeded our revenue targets. So when people just come out and say they are doing well, and we were reckless, the numbers don't show that. Because let's look at revenue. In 2024, total revenue and grants budget was 177.2 billion Ghana cedis. The actual revenue we received was 186 billion Ghana cedis versus 177.2 billion. We exceeded. If you came to domestic revenue, right? But if you compare this with what the government achieved in 2025, I already gave you the figure. In terms of total revenue and grant, the shortfall is 7.7 billion. In our case, we exceeded 177, and the actual was 186. Almost 9 billion Ghana cedis in excess. Then you come to domestic revenue. They have a shortfall of 6.8 billion Ghana cedis. In 2024, domestic revenue was projected 174 billion Ghana cedis. The actual was 184.9 billion Ghana cedis. More than 10 billion Ghana cedis in excess. They, in terms of tax revenue, they had a shortfall of almost 9 billion Ghana cedis. In 2024, tax revenue budget was 143 billion Ghana cedis. The actual collection was 151 billion Ghana cedis. So you are talking about another 10 billion Ghana cedis in excess. And so if they come and give slogans, MPP recklessly manage the economy, we are doing well, but you put the data against each other, then you see that what is really happening. Is somebody cooking a story? Is somebody doing propaganda? And so you media people, I'm challenging you. You should look at the data. And then you can tell whether this government is actually managing the economy well. As I speak to you, confidence in the economy is lost. Investors have passed a verdict. 45 auctions, T-bill auctions in 2025. So far, 45. 25 failed. 25. That is about 55% of the government T-bill auction failed. They recorded bid cover ratios below 1. They failed. What it means is that investors who are supposed to be investing in government instruments, government papers, are saying that it is not worth it. It is not worth investing. It won't give them the returns. Their reading of the economy shows that the economy is not doing well. And if an economy is not doing well, people don't want to invest in it. So your domestic investors are rejecting government paper. 45 auctions, 25 failed. And is it not curious that the very week the minister presented the budget, which is supposed to be given good news, right? And attracting investors to invest in the economy more. That very week, we had an auction failure. T-bill auction failures. Under subscription by 30%. 30% under subscription. The 2 days after the minister presented the budget. So if investors are telling you what is happening in the economy, who am I? The people who invest their money have given a verdict on the economy. The very week you present a budget, the second day after presenting the budget, more investors should have been investing in the economy, given the good news the minister touted in reading the budget. Rather, they rejected your instruments by 30%. So, the good people of Ghana will judge. Then they talk about inflation is a single-digit inflation. Single-digit inflation is good. It's very good. But there are different ways of reducing inflation. I like to simplify inflation for you. When they say inflation, the economists will say more money chasing fewer goods. More money chasing fewer goods. So if you want to address it, you either reduce the more money, which is chasing fewer goods, so that the money in circulation will be somehow proportional to the goods on the market. Or you leave the money there and then rather increase your production, so that instead of fewer goods, you also have more goods, matching the money in circulation. Or you use a hybrid of the two, supply side and demand side. What this government has done is to punish Ghanaians by using the demand side approach to addressing inflation. And what did they do? They withdrew so much money from the economy, from the market. When I was presenting our position, the minority position, I said 60 billion Ghana cedis since January has been withdrawn by the Bank of Ghana from the market. I've gone to look at the budget again, and the budget confirms 62 billion Ghana cedis withdrawn from the market by the Bank of Ghana through their open market operations to reduce liquidity. And so there is no money in the pockets of people. The money that would have been in the pockets of people, the Bank of Ghana has withdrawn. That is why maize farmers, rice farmers, and traders all over Ghana are complaining that people are not buying. People are not buying because there is no money. And this Christmas that is coming, I worry for traders. So traders out there, if you are not able to sell up to expectation this Christmas, it is because the government decided to address inflation by withdrawing 62 billion Ghana cedis from the market. So people don't have the money to come and buy. So I worry for traders. Just because you want to achieve single-digit inflation, the Ghanaian people must suffer. And you're using demand-side approach to addressing inflation when you should have been growing the economy through the supply side. The lazy approach to single-digit inflation is not good for our economy. And don't forget that this is not the first time Ghana has achieved single-digit inflation. In fact, in our history, the government that is credited with the longest period of single-digit inflation is the Nana Akufo-Addo government. 2018 and 2019, 2 years running, the MPP government achieved single-digit inflation, the longest period. Nana Addo Dankwa, who is being vilified, who is being maligned, who is being accused of having recklessly managed the economy. I've already given you his expenditure figures, his revenue figures, and now I'm saying that in terms of inflation, he has the longest period of single-digit inflation, if not for the circumstances that affected the whole world. COVID. And somebody has told him that the World Bank has said that COVID was not the cause. No, the World Bank didn't say that. The World Bank said that there were pre-existing vulnerabilities. And these vulnerabilities have existed since independence, and they continue to exist today. That is why the minister is not able to achieve his revenue target. There are vulnerabilities. But the World Bank said that they were worsened by COVID. And so media people said, oh, World Bank has debunked Akufo-Addo's government, COVID story. No, the World Bank didn't say what was reported by the media.
Right.
In fact, the World Bank issued a report in 2023 in which the World Bank says that COVID has led to the loss of 800,000 jobs. World Bank report. If COVID has led to 800,000 jobs lost, and you can see that it didn't cause problems in the economy, then what are you saying? Further, let me tell you something about this inflation again. If you unmax that inflation figure, the single-digit inflation, you will marvel at some of the prices we are seeing of some essential goods. While inflation has lowered, for some essential goods, the inflation, if you unmax it by classification, is actually higher than what we saw in 2024. I'll give you some examples. Go and look at this Ghana Statistical Service data. For example, water. In September 2024, the rate of increase in water prices was 2.8% year on year. September 2025, this year, water is 3.6%. 2.8% September 2024. September 2025 is 3.6%. Actually, in August 2025, it was even more, 3.9%. So if somebody is saying prices are falling, I am saying the Statistical Service of Ghana is saying that the rate of increase in prices for water in 2024 was lower than what we are seeing today. So when people use aggregate data, inflation is falling without going to the specific commodity prices, then you will be covering a lot. What actually means so much to people? The commodities, water. The price increase for water has been higher this year than it was in 2024. And it's not just water. Milk, other dairy products, eggs, is following the same pattern. September 2024, milk and eggs, the rate of increase in price was 8.6%.
Right.
If you compare that with September this year, it is year on year. This year, 2025, the similar period in 2025, September 2025, the rate of increase was 34.4% against 6.1% same period in 2024. August was even more serious, 49%. August 2025, 49%. And these are figures that you see in the data published by Ghana Statistical Service. So they should stop saying inflation is 8%, inflation is 1%. They should go and look at the specific commodities that people live with.
Right. And
you will see that prices have not gone down for essential commodities. Things are hard for the Ghanaian people. And if you compare with 2024, they were even better. The 2024 people were complaining. They said things were hard. They are harder today if we have to go by the statistics that I have seen.
I have the statistics in front of me and the data. We'll do some quick comparison, 2024 and 2025. You accused the media of not visiting
now
the
you
data.
Are doing this research.
I have the data now.
Yes.
Let's look at growth. Now, the GDP growth was 6.3 in the first quarter of 2025 versus 5.1% in the first quarter of 2024. That's acceleration, not deceleration.
In the second quarter.
And we also have non-oil on GDP. We have 7.8% in the first quarter of 2025 versus 6.8% same period 2024. Then for the service sector, we have 8.8% 3.2% growth versus 3.2% in 2024. In the manufacturing sector, we have 6.3% growth after contracting 0.5% in 2024. In the information and communication sector, we have 17.2% growth, and the financial services saw 9.5% growth, indicating sector stability. Now, if we talk about inflation,
okay, so let me
on December. Let me just
go to second quarter before. When you finish with the growth, then you move to another indicator.
Right.
So go to second quarter.
I'll bring you that data soon.
No, now, because we need to be consistent. If you haven't finished growth and then you move to another indicator, then the story doesn't flow.
No, so I'm referring to the first quarter.
Yes, so I'm saying that go to second quarter as well for growth.
I don't have that document readily available now. I'm just
so your research is not complete.
No,
I don't want it to give. No, I don't want it to give half of the story. You need to give the full story. For example, in the first quarter, this government had not implemented any of its programs. The budget was read in March 2025. This government had not even presented its budget in the first quarter. So how do you attribute the growth to this government in the first place? That is one. Second, when they started performing as a government, implementing their budget, the second quarter would have reflected somehow some of their policies. And that's why I want you to read the figures for second quarter. Because in the second quarter, the growth was 6.3%. Same time in 2024, it was 7%. 7%. The third quarter figure is yet to be released. And if it is released, you will see that it is consistent. It's going to be falling. In the third quarter of 2024, growth was 7.2%. You remember when the second quarter growth was released, 6.3%. I think it's a government statistician who said that this was the highest in 3 years or so. I came out to challenge it. I said, no, go and look at your data. 7%. So I wanted to give the growth, then we come to the other indices.
Now, when you say look at the data, what specific data points suggest this government is failing?
Oh, I think throughout my conversation here,
right,
I've been talking about data and how they are missing all their targets. I don't know what you asked again. After preaching the whole Bible to you, then you asked me who Jesus Christ was.
Right.
That's exactly what you are doing now.
I wanted the specific of that.
You want me to go over again? I will go over most of them.
Because you speak profoundly about the data. Now let's look about revenue mobilization.
Yes.
And indeed, for 2025, this government couldn't meet their revenue mobilization targets. For 2026, they have another target. And revenue mobilization is very crucial because it's going to fund all these projects. They speak about the big push, then Kokon Kitty. The statement document for Q1, Q3 to 2025, the total revenue was about 154.9 billion versus the programmed 162.6 billion. And against the 133.5 billion target, nearly 9 billion Ghana cedis below expectations.
So now, can you also compare with 2024 as you were dealing with the growth?
Right. Now, these are significant misses. The 2026 budget projects revenue jumped to 16.8% of GDP, driven by 18.8% in non-oil tax revenue. Now, based on your both technical analysis and operational experience as finance minister, are these targets realistic or aspirational?
I think I've answered this question already.
Right.
I don't see it to be realistic because 18.8% from domestic non-oil revenue must be backed by some policy measures. I don't know what policy measures, apart from compliance that they have talked about. And secondly, they are seeking to narrow the tax base. We want to collect more and you are narrowing the tax base. That is why I worry that if they are not achieving their revenue, they may come back mid-year to increase taxes. Seriously, they may do that. Unless, again, they don't intend to implement the budget for 2026. even last year, they came midway to increase the levy on petroleum product prices, the one Ghana cedis per liter. They did that. In the original budget 2025, they increased the growth and sustainability levy for mining companies from 1% to 3%. In the 2025 budget, the import levy, the special import levy, which they promised to abolish in their manifesto, you know what happened? That import levy should have ended in 2024. They extended it to 2028. Okay? So while they were saying that they abolished emission tax, betting tax, what, and you know, the reality is that what they introduced was more impactful in terms of the adverse effect on Ghanaians than what they withdrew. For example, the 1 cedi per liter was bringing them about 5 billion Ghana cedis, whilst e-levy was doing under 1 billion. So if you take out e-levy under 1 billion and then you bring a levy which is to take 5 billion Ghana cedis from Ghanaians, what did you do? You know, and so I worry about the projection for this year, and this is why I think that the budget is not realistic, and it doesn't really give me the indicators that the budget will be implemented.
Let's look at job creation, and because it's one of the mainstay for the Ghanaian people. We know of the Ghana, the 24-hour economy. Again, we haven't seen any cogent plan in the implementation of that. The government also talks about the big push setting to generate 490,000 jobs from these road contracts. Again, you have said this morning of the systemic under execution that we have seen. Tell me more about this.
This budget is a jobless budget, as we described it. It is not going to deliver the jobs promised. I'll tell you, number one, the 133 for the 24-hour economy is not happening, and it's not going to happen. Okay? It is budgeted to cost the government $4 billion. $4 billion. The government is expected to contribute between $300 million to $400 million of the $4 billion. I'm sure you've seen the document on the 24-hour economy. Right. Now, the rest of the money, $3.6 billion, is supposed to come from the private sector. And the government had promised that they will provide some tax incentives and rebates to attract the private sector to bring in the $3.6 billion US dollars. I was hoping that the 2026 budget will be used to announce those tax incentives and rebates. The government is promising the private sector to raise the money to do the 24-hour economy. Unfortunately, this budget is silent on it. This budget did not provide any tax incentives whatsoever to incentivize the mobilization of the 3.6 billion US dollars. Also, the 300 million to 400 million US dollars the government is supposed to contribute, I didn't see any allocation to that extent. What the government has done rather is allocate 110 million Ghana cedis. But if you even look at the appendix, it's 90 million Ghana cedis. And 70 million is going to goods and services, 20 million is going to capital spending. The 20 million which is going to capital spending, put that in US dollars, that's how much? That's how much? Because government is supposed to contribute between $300 to $400 million. And 24-hour economy, as they presented it, is supposed to be more capital intensive. Because they want to build industries, they want to build market centers, and so it's capital intensive to create the jobs that they are promising. And yet the government did not make allocation of what it is supposed to contribute towards the 24-hour economy. Only 20 million Ghana cedis for capital spending. My brother, 20 million Ghana cedis. When you are supposed to be bringing in $400 million. And what will incentivize the private sector to bring the remaining $3.6 billion? I didn't see any incentive provided in the budget. The minister did not mention any single tax incentive or rebates that they will offer the private sector to bring in. So the 24-hour economy remains a slogan. As far as I'm concerned, the 133 job model or job policy is not going to happen. Okay? Now you come to Big Push. They say Big Push will create 490,000 jobs. That is also not going to happen. And so people must begin to manage their expectations of the 2026 budget. What did the minister say? They have awarded contracts worth 63 billion Ghana cedis in Big Push. That cannot be true. You allocated 13 billion Ghana cedis for 2025 and you issued authorization to commit for the Ministry of Roads to go and procure and commit government to 7.6 billion Ghana cedis. When on this earth, since you came into office, did you award Big Push projects amounting to 63 billion? Even if you add the total allocation for 2025 and 2026, they said 30 billion for 2026. They did 13 billion for 2025. That gives us how much? My brother, 13 plus. That's 43 billion Ghana cedis. And you haven't even procured more than 7.6 billion Ghana cedis. How then can you come and say you've awarded contracts to the tune of 63?
Kwafufie says the best finance minister, Dr. Amin Adam, still maintain NP. Amen. And that's comment coming from Aman Kwafufie on Facebook. Good morning, host, and good morning to our own former finance minister, Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam. We are highly delighted to have him as an MP for the House, where government activities can properly be scrutinized. Abdul Minister says, Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam, we're proud of you. Allah bless you abundantly. Good presentation, Honorable Dr. Amin Adam. Good morning. And this is coming from William Jobs. Okay. Let's keep some of the messages, or let's keep the messages very civil, so that if you have any questions on Facebook, go there, leave them here, and maybe we have some few minutes, we can still post them to the former finance minister. Doc, let's talk about the capex, because you criticize it at 3.6% of the GDP as inadequate for transformation. Imani agrees, suggesting it should reach 10% of GDP. IEA called the 2.4% allocation in 2025 wholly inadequate. Here's the constraints: wages, debt service, and the statutory payments consume over 2/3 of the budget. Where does the fiscal space come from?
Well, there are many ways of doing this. First of all, the government has, gained significant fiscal space,
right,
as a result of the debt renegotiation and the restructuring that we did. Some of the interests they were supposed to be paying, they no longer pay. For example, the restructuring with our bilateral creditors has suspended interest payment for, I think, 3 years or so, and so that is fiscal space for the government. The negotiation with the Eurobond holders, $13 billion. You mentioned that earlier, $13.1 billion led to Ghana being outrightly forgiven. About $5 billion cancelled out of the $13.1 billion. That was the negotiation Akufo-Addo government did. $5 billion cancelled from our debt with our foreign Eurobond holders and the domestic Eurobond holders. And then, of course, as a result of this negotiation, we also made savings, cash flow savings of about $4.7 billion. It's all provided the government fiscal space. And this is the work we did under the leadership of the distinguished President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Okay, that is fiscal space. But government can also create additional fiscal space. When Dr. Bawumia said that if he became president, he was going to empower the private sector to lead construction of social infrastructure, he meant it. And how do we do that? For example, school infrastructure projects. Government has given 9.9 billion Ghana cedis to Get Fund. Get Fund shouldn't just go and start building schools. And the next year, some of the schools are not completed. Another allocation to Get Fund, they will go and try to complete these projects. Some of them may even be completed over 3 years. Some of them may not be completed at all. Right. And so the new model that we are proposing is that government should allow the private sector to design and construct school buildings, okay? And government will pay them over time, because school buildings are long-term investment, and every private investor who knows that it can bring returns will invest their money in school buildings. And instead of allocating lump sum money every year to go and build schools, we don't complete them. We could get the private sector to invest and complete these schools, in time. Ghanaians will start benefiting from it, but the payment would take over a long period of time, so that it doesn't impose a huge burden on the budget every year. Right. Then also, the 9.9 billion given to Get Fund. Get Fund could have used that to enter into a PPP arrangement, public-private partnership arrangement, where the private sector will bring the counterpart funding, and then they will invest in projects. This will help reduce the exposure of government. Government could also launch school infrastructure bonds, which the private sector can subscribe to, so that they can then use that money to build and then pay over time. So these are new models that we think the government should be looking at in order to create fiscal space to be able to do other things. And so as far as we are concerned, yes, there is need to increase the capital spending. We did 4.6% of GDP, total capital spend, 4.6% of GDP in 2024. Now it went down to 1.5% this year. Next year is 3.6%. This is why I was confident to say that the level of capital investment is not significant enough to drive growth and to create jobs. And so we hope that Iman is proposing 10%. I don't know, but if we begin to let the private sector come in to the provision of social infrastructure like school buildings in our schools, hopefully we could do other capital spending with the money that we'll be saving year after year.
Right. One of the things that this government is touting as a feather in its cap is how they have managed the exchange rate. I want to just refer to something you have said. Your statement referenced roughly $8 billion in the Bank of Ghana intervention since January 2025. Now the cedi appreciated 25.6%, making it the sub-Saharan African's best performer. The Bank of Ghana also issued new guidelines acknowledging the interventions were non-transparent and potentially unsustainable. Now the result, objectively good, cedi from 14 cedis, 70 pesos at the end of 2024 to around 10 cedis, 94 pesos now. Are you arguing that these gains are temporary and costly? Can you explain the sustainability concern?
I think that when the currency is stabilized, is good for us, because people can plan, right? And but there are also effects associated with that. A stronger cedi means that Ghanaian exports become more expensive, right? So importers are happy, exporters are sad. And so it is always important to balance it, to balance your policy, such that, because the exports that will bring in more forex, and it's the exports that will create jobs in the economy because they are produced here and exported elsewhere. It's the exports that will grow our economy. Imports, it's just bringing in, buying and selling. It really doesn't support the productive base of the economy. It's like you are rather helping create jobs in other countries, grow the economies of other countries. So we need to look at the currency stabilization in a proper context that will help to, boost our economy and boost growth and create jobs for our economy. But in terms of the sustainability
concern,
yes, once you continue to build reserves at significant levels, you can continue to intervene in the market. Now, as a result of the COVID and the international pressures that we faced, we lost a lot of reserves. Our reserves were actually reduced to less than 2 months of import cover, whereas decent one should be about 3 months of import cover. Okay, and so as part of the IMF program, we were to go on aggressive building of reserves. So the Bank of Ghana was doing everything to build the reserves. As a result of that, the IMF put restriction on how much the Bank of Ghana could intervene in the market to strengthen the cedi. And you know how much? $80 million a month. Bank of Ghana could not put more than $80 million a month so that they could build the reserves. So true to this, we build the reserves. People are asking if it was easy to intervene because we are saying that the Bank of Ghana is putting billions of dollars on the market. If it was that easy, why didn't you do it? We were building the reserves. As a result of that, we could put into the market only $80 million. And it's the reserves that we have built that they are now putting on the market.
Is that the reason why you said that they haven't done anything to...
Yes, because by the end of 2024, we had built reserves to the tune of about $9 billion. But what happened? At the end of 2024, I think about November or December, the IMF withdrew the restriction. They withdrew the restriction of putting not more than $80 million on the market. That is what we call the intervention budget. Unfortunately, restrictions have been removed, reserves have been built, we lost power. We didn't stay in power to benefit from the difficult policies and measures that we had to endure. This government came into power, no restrictions, and therefore they started taking the reserves we had built and putting that on the market to show up the cedi. And this is why I keep saying that these people, they haven't done anything magical about the currency. It is just that we couldn't intervene and we built the reserves and the restrictions removed before they came into government. And then they started using the reserves we had built to put on the market. So we ended 2024 with an exchange rate of 14 cedis to the dollar, with intervention of 80 million a month. Now they are doing almost $1 billion a month, average $1 billion a month. Because if you look at the 8 billion they have injected in 8 months, that's an average $1 billion a month. Should the difference between 14 cedis to $1 be just 3 cedis to $1? Because it's now 11 cedis to $1. We ended at 14 for something cedis to $1. So the difference in terms of the appreciation is just about 3 cedis to $1 with an injection of an average of $1 billion a month versus hours of $80 million a month. And this is why I said that if we were to go by the level of intervention, then the cedi should be 8 cedi to $1 or even below. But the reason it is not so is because they are not implementing policies to address the structural challenges of the economy. And the structural challenges of the economy include what? Building the productive base of the economy, improving the supply side. Currently, the macroeconomic policy framework of this government emphasizes demand management policies at the expense of supply improvement policies. So the structural challenges are there. Wage rigidities are there. How do you give workers 10% pay rise in the base pay 2025? The president appealed to them to exercise patience, that things were bad, and when things got improved, he will give them more. At the time you have stabilized the economy, at the time you say things have improved, then you come and give them 9% for 2026. The 10% you gave them was below inflation. So the workers actually suffered losses in real income. And at the time you are saying things have improved, when you should have given them more to recover the losses in their real income, you give them less, 9%. So the structural issues are there. And unless you address them, you keep intervening. And the heavy intervention they are doing puts the reserves at risk. If we are knocked by any shock, international shock, today, and the reserves cannot support the economy in 3 months, then we are all worried. And this is why this government has put in the 2026 budget a projection in terms of the international gross reserve of 3 months of import cover, 2026. Today it is about 4.5 months of import cover. 2026, they are projecting 3 months of import cover. It means that our reserves are going to be depleted because they want to continue to intervene to keep the cedi where it is and to tell Ghanaians that they are doing well. Because we have politicized.
Even with gold board?
Yes, we have politicized exchange rate. Even with gold board, because gold is a commodity that is very volatile. Price of gold is very volatile. Today, price of gold are higher, in excess of $3,000 dollars per ounce. It cannot be the same every time. There have been times price of gold falls below $1,000. And so in the event that the price of gold changes, goes down, what happened? Our overdependence on gold now, what happens? In fact, gold now contributes financially more than oil, isn't it?
True.
And so maybe we should be reporting, GDP, non-gold GDP, rather than non-oil GDP. Maybe we should begin report. I read something about that from someone recently. Right. That shows our overdependence on gold. But the prices of gold are volatile. And so we need to have a long-term view of the interventions that they are making. They have understood the pulse of the Ghanaian, that exchange rate is a political issue. When dollar is going down, even though it doesn't bring any, improvement in the living conditions of people go out and say, oh, dollar is down, dollar is down, dollar is down, the cedi is strong. That the optics are around it. And so that is what they are feeding on, rather than really managing the economy. Right. And if it is the optics, we could have done it if we didn't have the restriction to put only $80 million a month into the market. And they are doing billions of dollars. And so we expect more from them and not what it is at the moment.
Time check is 9:52. We still have some few minutes to wrap up this conversation about the analysis of the minority in Parliament on the back of the 2026 budget presented by Finance Minister Kansila Tuforse. Doc, as we wrap up this interview, one particular headline that this government has been touting is that public debt is down from 726.7 billion Ghana cedis, which represents 68.9% of GDP in December 2024, to 630,000.2 billion Ghana cedis, which also represents 48.9% of GDP by October 2025. That's nearly a 20% drop in less than a year. Objectively significant. You helped engineer that through the Eurobond structuring. Where's the caveat in the success story?
Well, when you successfully get your Eurobond holders cancel $5 billion out of their $13.1 billion you owe them, you expect your national debt to reduce significantly, isn't it? You expect it to reduce significantly. But also, let me say that as a result of the strengthening of the cedi, our dollar value of our debt has come down. Okay? These are the reasons the national debt has come down. It's largely because of the restructuring of our debt that we did. Largely. And this is why all these rating agencies, whether you are talking about Fitch or Standard & Poor's or the other one, Moody's, all the opinion they expressed when they upgraded Ghana's credit rating, they did not miss out the reasons for the upgrade. And the reason they have cited is debt restructuring, the completion of the debt restructuring. The minister is currently signing some of the debt restructuring agreements with our bilateral creditors. We owe them 5.1 billion. They are now signing those agreements. And people should not mistake that to mean that this government is doing any debt restructuring. No. This agreement was already made in February 2024 and firmed up in July 2024. And the countries then decided that they would take the agreement into their internal approval systems. Some of them have to take it through their parliament for their parliament to approve. Those processes are completed. That's why they are now signing those bilateral debt restructuring agreements with Great Britain. They've signed with Germany. They've signed with other countries. It isn't that this government has negotiated any debt restructuring, no. Because I've heard some people saying that but the MPP said they completed the 93% of the debt restructuring. Why is it that this government is also now signing? Is it new debt restructuring agreements they are signing? Are they winning Ghana some debt forgiveness? No. All these were negotiated and dusted in 2024, and these countries, our foreign bilateral creditors, had to now take the agreement through their processes, internal processes, and it is now the time for them to sign. That is why the signing is happening. But for the Eurobonds, everything was completed in June, within under 9 months. In 2024, everything was completed and dusted. That is why you don't see them signing anything in respect of the Eurobonds. And so the debt restructuring is largely the result of the reduction in our national debt. And all the credit rating agencies, they have acknowledged that in all the opinion. I saw the minister boasting about Ghana's credit rating now moved from junk to B+. He didn't do anything to warrant this. It's the work we did that has been acknowledged, and the market has acknowledged it, because the same people we negotiated with, they are the market, the investors out there that we negotiated, so they know what we did. And so the minister should not seek to take credit for the upgrading of Ghana's credit rating. He has done virtually nothing to warrant that. And so they should give us the credit. Where credit is due, it must go. That is how we can govern this country and acknowledge the contributions of everybody in the development of our country.
Right. Minister, thank you so much for your time. This is all time would allow us an analysis of the 2026 budget. And that was Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam, former finance minister, member of parliament for Karaga, and also a ranking member of the finance committee of parliament.
Thank you for watching. Like, comment, share, and subscribe.